Okay, hi everyone. So this episode is a little bit different. So in this episode, I'm chatting with me. I guess it's the thing I miss most about just being able to stand up and teach and tell stories. So last week I asked you to send in some questions, and thank you so much to everyone who did. There was loads of questions. So what I've done is I've kind of picked a few of them, and we'll maybe do another Q&A episode in a few weeks. So I've got them just on the screen at the side, so I'll just keep kind of looking over there so I know what my next question is. So the first question is, what makes me happy about computing? And I guess the thing that makes me, the thing that excites me about going to work is that I make a difference, right? And that might be a major change. So I can advise a company on using accessibility. I can do some research, come up with ways to help people make their websites or their software or things more accessible. It might be that I'm kind of contributing to projects to help education. How do we use augmented reality, for example, in education? Or it might just be a student comes and I can say a kind word and it makes a difference, right? So, and I think that's what's really important, is that difference you make, you might not even notice. And part of that is about computing, and part of that is just about being a good person. So making a difference. And if you've ever seen me give a presentation, I always have this kind of like a recruitment presentation, come and be a student at Dundee. I always have this slide that says that we do cool things that matter. And I think, I believe that. I believe that what we do, whether it has a direct application or not, in terms of we can definitely see that it's going to happen, it makes a difference, whether it's now or it's sometime in the line. So the potential of computing to change people's lives, that's what excites me, and that's what makes me happy about working in computing. Okay, question 2. What makes me sad or worried about computing? And I guess my biggest concern is the ubiquity of computing and how that impacts on digital well-being. So we rely on technology more and more and more, and that might be smart devices that are monitoring how we behave in the home, or there's all this social media for communicating, there's Teams, there's all these video calls now. So the amount of time that we actually spend away from technology, that's becoming less and less and less. So personally, at the beginning of lockdown, I was definitely really overwhelmed by the technology that was in my life all of a sudden. I'm someone who quite enjoys turning my phone off, putting it on silent, leaving it on my desk and wandering off. And I would say that my well-being kind of maybe took a bit of a hit because of that. So technology was sort of seeping into parts of my life that I didn't want it to. I was getting all of these notifications about work-related things at the weekend, so I had to really reevaluate how I was using notifications, for example, because now it's not a knock on the door between 9 and 5, it's a notification at any time of the day, because quite rightly, everyone's got different working hours based on their own circumstances. So I think now is the time, really. We're all just cogs on a big internet machine that's just this driving force, and I think it's really important that individually we take responsibility for our own well-being, because the best person that can look out for you, that's you, right? So I think going forward, my worry is that we are driven by the technology. It's important that we first consider the user, the person, the life that we're going to impact when we introduce that technology, and we go from there. So the biggest lesson for me really is that we've been really technology driven over the last 3 months. And just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should. And I think we really need to take a step back and decide how that's going to impact people and whether or not that's something that we want to achieve. And as technology just becomes more and more ubiquitous, it becomes more and more a part of people's lives, the ethics and the privacy concerns and so on that play into that are really important. And that's why at Dundee, I think we have a nice history of putting the user focus first, considering the user as a person, not just a black box entity. And I think it's really important that we keep that in mind, and we try and educate people as widely as possible, whether that's kind of, you're going to a hackathon and you're thinking, okay, who's actually going to use this? Or you go out into the workplace and you're advocating for kind of the user point of view. Like, it's important we don't lose sight of that. So that is what I worry about most. Let me scroll down. What's the funniest interaction I've had with a student? So the funniest interaction, I will not name this student. It's a he, which is about 70% of my students. So one night I was out with my friends. We'd had a few Diet Cokes. We were walking along the Nethergate and we passed Istanbul kebab shop at the bottom of South Tay Street, and a student literally fell out the kebab shop at my feet. In the student's defence, there is a tiny little step when you come out, and sometimes after a few beers you don't quite see that step. But yeah, so this student just kind of fell at my feet, kind of did the whole looked up and just legged it. The student at that point was in second year, and no matter how hard I tried for the rest of his degree, he did not look me in the eye at all, like was just so embarrassed. And my friends were like so confused, right? Because they were like, what was that about? Because, some guy just basically looked at me in horror and ran away. So for them, that I think was a really nice interaction to like my job. But yeah, if you're going to fall out of a kebab shop at my feet, I'm over it. But carry on. What do I do when I'm not teaching? Cinema, Netflix and chill. So most recently, I guess, I've started going to the gym. That's been the biggest change in like my life so far. So I go to Pure Gym. I see students in Pure Gym. Please do not run away from me. Please just say hi. Running away from me is awkward for both of us. I'm perfectly happy to just say hi and carry on. I'm a human being. I do things outside of my work. And I think that's been, again, one of the hardest parts for me about lockdown is not having that routine. So I would like maybe 3 mornings a week, I'm at the gym in the morning before I come to work, and that kind of like sets me up. So I've had to kind of maneuver around that in lockdown. So I recorded a video this morning actually of my gym session. So I have built a storage unit in my garden, like a storage box thing, and purchased, borrowed, stolen a whole bunch of gym equipment, and that's now in there, and that's now my gym. So what I'll do is I'll add a small interlude here where you can go and see my gym session of this morning. Typical gym garden lockdown. Okay, next question. How did you get comfortable talking to camera? So I think like everything you do, practice, practice, practice. My first videos were extremely boring. I'm sure they were, and I apologise to anyone who had to listen to them. But the reason for that is I was thinking so much, right? I was thinking, okay, what slide's coming next? What am I going to say? What topic have I got to talk about next? I need to make sure I say it just right. Well, why do I do that? Why is it so important to be just right the first time? If you've ever seen me lecture, there are segues, there are diversions, there are, oh no, that was wrong, this doesn't look right, someone help me out. So I don't behave like that in real life. Why would I behave like that on a video? It doesn't make sense. It's not me. I want to just, deliver what comes out of my mouth the first time. That's what you get when you come to my class. And I think just keep things simple. So feature creep is something we see a lot, and never more so than when you're making videos. Like this will be, this video here is just a one take. If I get lost, I get lost. If I talk about something that doesn't make sense, fine. So you really need to think about, again, what you want to achieve and go from there. It's very easy to get lost in post-production and do it again and again and again. But once you make that first step and you're just sitting there so embarrassed, oh my God, people are watching my videos on YouTube, this is horrific. Once you get over that, it's fine. I actually very rarely watch my videos back. That's my strategy. If something's wrong, I trust that someone will come and tell me. And if not, then hey. And I mean, a lot of people get really caught up in, who's watching them and what are the metrics of my video and what's the behind the scenes analysis. And you know what? If someone doesn't want to come to my lecture in real life, they won't. If someone doesn't want to watch my videos, they won't. That's the crux of the whole thing. That I just do one take recordings. I keep everything as simple as I can in terms of recording and editing. I'm in my lane, I'm staying there and I'm doing my thing. And the awkwardness will pass, and the whole recording thing will just become, an everyday part of your life. It's that simple. It's also summer and I'm hay fevered. Okay, who's the best lecturer you've ever had? So the best lecturer I ever had is actually someone from the University of Glasgow. So my first degree was there. It was in pharmacology, so life sciences. And I don't actually remember his name, which is not a good reflection on me, but what he did stuck with me for a long time. So there was two things that I remember most about him. One, he was really animated. So he had this big stick and he would wave it around and point at things on the board. I've never had anyone bring biochemistry to life in that way before, and genetics and what your genetics are in terms of the chemistry. So he used to deliver lectures 3 times a day, at 9, 2 and 5 I think, to about 300 people each time. And I used to be in awe of this, first year student, this guy is as enthusiastic at 5 o'clock as he is at 9 o'clock. How is that even possible, right? I can't do that now. That's still amazing. But anyway, this one time he had a big stick. He swung it around. There was a jug of water in the dais and he poured it all over the front row. And just the way he dealt with it was just amazing. There was no drama. Everything just carried on. And he kind of felt sorry for the girl that he'd poured the water over, gave her some extra notes, and we all benefited, right? But he was just so unfazed. And the second thing is that he never singled anyone out for poor behaviour. He would single people out, oh, that was a good answer, but he would never single out poor behaviour. And I think that's really important to remember, because poor behaviour is usually because people don't know any better or because there's a stressor in their life or whatever. So we were kind of a big second year class, quite young. There's an anonymity in a crowd, right? And there was a lot of chat, so there was a balcony in the lecture theatre and people would chat a lot, and he never really commented on it. So the first class, there was this chat, he just ignored it. And then in the second lecture, he stood on the balcony and gave his class from the balcony. And it was it was such a big movement and he just didn't address it. And everyone spoke about it, and you're oh, I see what he's done here now with hindsight. You're he's brought together this class because now everyone is accountable for that behaviour and everyone is going to support each other to make sure that, people know what is an appropriate behaviour. And he just commanded this respect without exerting any direct authority, and I'm kind of impressed by that. I'm going to pick someone else from Dundee, and the person I'm going to pick from Dundee is Keith Edwards, and he'll hate me for saying this, and I'm sorry, Keith, but it is true. So I did a conversion MSc. I did the MSc Applied Computing, which takes people from any background at all pretty much and gives you a grounding in computing within the year. So Keith taught me introductory programming, and what struck me most about that was that he was so chilled. He knew everything there was to know about this language, and compared to what I needed to know, right? And he just wrote it on the board, and there was no drama, and he took his time, and he made sure he was really clear about what he wanted to say before he said it, and that's his personality, right? It's the very opposite from mine. And that's still true now that I work with him as staff. I don't think I've ever seen him lose his temper in any great way, and of course, again, that's the opposite of me. I'm very short-tempered and quick to respond. And he also never told me an answer, and at the time that was quite frustrating. Keith, should I do X or Y? Well, there are benefits to both and drawbacks to both. And I remember being like, just tell me the answer. But I can probably remember the most about that module, even though I've not really done much in-depth programming since then. I mean, I've taught introductory classes, but some of the stuff from that class I've never used, and I still have this deep conceptual understanding of C++, C++ in particular, but rather than just knowing the answer for an exam, right? So there's this kind of drive to know the answer for the exam. Why? Learn the subject, and that's what Keith helps you to do. So Keith is probably, in terms of being an educator, like my role model in that respect. Okay, next question. A long one. What is the value and place of teamwork or group work compared to individual work as we move towards flipping classrooms, blended teaching, and in general, a brave new online world? That's such a nice way, rather than saying our new normal, a brave online world. That's what I'm going to use. Okay, so I think team working skills are going to be even more important than before, because we've already established, through trial and error and psychology and whatever, within industry, that team working is good. So at the very least, it avoids a single point of failure. And building on that, two brains are better than one. They bring different ideas. They might be conflicting ideas, but it allows you an exploration that you wouldn't have if there was only one of you, right? And if you add, this kind of modern idea that everything is now, those added resources of, the sum is greater than the individual parts in terms of teamwork, if you can add all of those resources together, you're going to be a success, because you can blend everyone into one kind of team driving towards one thing. And that is going to be the world that students are moving into. And so, you've got to use time at uni to explore different options. You've got to use time at uni to trial new ways of working, trial new things. And it's a period in life when you can make mistakes, and as long as you learn from them, that's okay. The more mistakes you make at this point, the better it is, because you're going to leave knowing for sure what your optimal working environment is. And that's going to help you pick your career and direct your career. And so that learning and reflection of that process is really difficult, right? You've got to look deep inside you and things that you can work on. Know what are your positive skills, things that you can contribute to a group, and then look at things that you can work on. So I don't really like to call these weaknesses, because they're not. A team really is the sum of the positive parts that go into it. They're just areas or skills that you've not fully embraced or developed yet. So they're opportunities to push you out of your comfort zone. And the issue now, where a lot of things are mainly remote, a lot of employers are saying they're going to stay in that remote environment. The usual workflow doesn't apply. So you can do two things. You can either shy away from group work. It's hard, it's difficult, I don't like it. Or you can say, right, I need to pay more attention to these opportunities and how I can develop as a result of those and capitalise on them. And the key to doing that is to play with the tech that's supporting you, right? It's not going to be that you pick up the phone. There's going to be video calls, online whiteboards, blah, blah, blah. So when you use a new IDE, what's the first thing you do? You sit down, you spend some time, you figure out, right, if early on, hello world, right? That's the basic. Then you start saying, okay, how do I bring in libraries? How do I do this thing? How do I input my class from a previous project, right? You're exploring the tech. And for some reason, people don't want to do that with group work. They jump straight into Miro, an online whiteboard, and they say it doesn't work. Well, that's because you're trying to do the task before you know how to do the task. So you need to take that time, you need to play. You need to just spend some time putting a board up with loads of sticky notes and figuring out what the features are. Don't try and do everything at once. You wouldn't do that in any other part of your education, so why do you think that teamwork needs an all or nothing approach? Take your time, get used to it, and be honest with your team. If you're struggling, say so. You might find that other people are in the right position and they can create a really supportive environment for you to overcome those kind of challenges and take the opportunity. And if you can support others in the team, do that. If seriously you're struggling with group work, then I know the university, the school and computing, so at all levels, are kind of working on ways to support group work online. You can get in touch with the disability advisor for computing, which is currently me, or I can offer some support or suggestions based on my own kind of challenges as well as we went through lockdown. But you can also go to your advisor of studies, you can go to disability services, especially if you think you're particularly impacted by a disability or, anxiety, accessibility needs, whatever it is. But basically there's a group of people that want to support you in working with the team in a way that you're comfortable. So don't shy away from it, embrace it. Do I think exams are a good idea? Do I think exams are a good idea? Well, yes and no. So it depends what we think an exam is. So an exam really is kind of a test of your knowledge or how proficient you are in a skill, right? And a lot of people consider exams just to be that knowledge. So I'm not a fan of a situation where you just have to regurgitate that knowledge, because what is that testing? You don't go out into the workplace and arrive on day one and someone gives you a bit of paper and they say, please put all of your knowledge on this bit of paper. It will be useful for your career, right? That's nonsense. But I think exam, in terms of an opportunity for an individual to show a skill, to show critical thinking and to apply that knowledge that you have, that's important. So I think that's what we should be assessing. There are limitations in what you can do, because you've got to show some knowledge, and showing that knowledge, the exam's the easiest way. But I'm really hopeful actually that the one good thing that will come out of lockdown is that we're going to start to look at our infrastructure. We're going to start to look at what exams we deliver and whether they're useful. So I am already figuring out for like my user experience class, why do we have an exam, right? I've always had an exam, and I've always had an exam because it was there when I took over the module however many years ago. Like, that's a waste of people's time. And I've tried to make that exam over time more about the application of skills, right? You write an essay, you show me that you can critically reflect on the module content. But why does that really have to happen within an exam hall? I don't understand. So yeah, I'm spending a lot of time right now thinking about what an exam is and whether or not I need them, and whether or not they need to be time limited. Time limited is good in a sense, because you're faced with deadlines in the real world and it's important that you can work towards them, but also on the other hand it's important that you learn to manage your time, and so you spend the appropriate amount of time on this task and others are kind of happening at the same time. But exams are always high stakes, they're always stressful, and sometimes they're not the best thing. So there's a big push to get rid of pen and paper exams, for example. And yeah, as we look into that, I think there's going to be opportunities to come up with much more creative versions of an exam and start looking at an exam as a test of knowledge or a test of a skill, and not bounded by a bit of paper and pen. So that's what my opinion on exams. Okay, when teaching a module, is it easy to see what grades people will probably get? So who are the class toppers and who will probably fail? To an extent, yes. Of course, there's going to be outliers, but I think where students engage positively with the module content in some way, they are going to be successful, right? I don't particularly look prior to my classes on previous performance. I'm assessing students as they arrive, partly because I teach something that's maybe not covered very much elsewhere in the course, and there's no programming in my classes, for example, so that's an element of things are really different, and the skills that you have elsewhere are going to be different to the skills that you need for, the kind of classes that I teach. So as an aside, I'm not super fond of this idea that modules are a component of study and then you have this cram and forget mentality. I think it's important that you learn the subject matter, and that subject matter is then helpful for you to show that skill and exhibit that skill in whatever an exam format is. But I think if you take that in mind, an easier way to determine success is whether someone engages in computing in general. Does someone take part in hackathons, and do you take part in extracurricular activities? Are you part of ducks? Are you enthused by the things that these guys are talking about? So success doesn't always mean that you got an A grade or that you got first. Success can be, I finally made this program work after 2 days. Success can be, oh, that's what the user wants. Success can be whatever you define it to be. And I think that society is really pushing to, a first is a success. But what gets you the job is what you can talk about when you go there. You don't get hired on the basis that you've got a 2-1 or a first. You get hired on the basis that you're enthusiastic, you've got evidence of your own enthusiasm. So I made this project, look at it, isn't it cool? And that's always my advice for students when you're working on honours projects and so on. Pick something that either you want to explore, or something that you're interested in and that's your career direction. If you don't know a career direction yet, that's fine, you've got a whole year to figure it out. But if you do, use that as your chance to create something that people will be able to talk to you about in your chosen area. If you really like databases, do an absolutely hot database, try out some new tech, make it cool, right? Whatever enthuses you. And if you're working on a personal project, let me know. Let other lecturers know. We're in this job because we love computing and we love people learning new things, right? And the potential of computing that people can create and express themselves in ways that is not writing an exam or the theory. We really want to see what you do with the stuff that we teach you. So you never know, we might be able to offer help or resources or some kind of opportunities for you to bring that to life. So share your knowledge. We'll be as excited as you are, I promise. Okay, 2 top 5 questions to end with. Top 5 languages to learn in 2021. Okay, first one, Java. It's a fairly forgiving introductory language. You could replace that with something like C# if you wanted to, but the skills you learn there you can easily transfer to other languages. C++ is slightly more complex. You've got to think a little bit more deeply about your algorithms and your processes. You have to start thinking about memory management in a much more concentrated way and so on. So that is probably the progression. Java, then C. Instantly, it's what we teach at Dundee. Python, if you're interested in applying what you learn to the sciences, life sciences, that sort of thing, or if you're interested in data science and data engineering, then Python is kind of a key language for that. So if you want to keep your options open, Python is a good start. HTML, the whole world's online. If you don't know HTML, you're not going to get very far. A lot of people are like, no, HTML, it's really simple, but it's also the basis of how the entire internet is constructed to an extent. So you've got to learn that. And then building on the HTML content, JavaScript. A lot of how we interact with the world is JavaScript. So JavaScript libraries, other tools that are built on something similar. But if you learn JavaScript, there are hundreds, thousands of libraries that can help you build interactive web services and applications. So that are the 5: Java, C++, Python, HTML, and JavaScript. So finishing off with the 5 skills you think students should have before graduating. So the first one is communication skills for me. So we hear this banded over and over and over again. Communication skills are important, transferable skills are important. But if you can't get your point across, why do you have a point in the first place? If you can't communicate with your peers, with industry partners, with the funders, right, then you're not going to get very far. And communication is not just standing up giving a presentation. How do you send an email? Right? Is that a professionally constructed email? How do you conduct yourself in video calls? Like, you're sitting in your bed. Did you make your bed? Like, the amount of unmade beds I've seen recently. It's like, just make your environment look nice, right? All of these things. And how do you communicate within those video calls? You know, are you getting your point across well? Are you allowing other people to speak, and so on? So all of these things, although they seem like, obviously that's what we do, how you reflect on them and build on them is really important. So communication, collaboration, teamwork is here to stay. It is not going away. The chances of you not working in a team as a graduate is super, super small. Unless you are a one-man band, you're going to be part of a team, or at least interfacing with a team or other individuals. You're going to have people relying on your work, and you're going to be relying on their work. So don't lose sight of the fact that collaboration works both ways. You need to learn how to communicate with other people and then respond to their communications as well. Adaptive thinking is my third one. So in the digital world, things constantly change. You constantly need to come up with new ways of doing things, work with new tools that will help you do that. And so you need to be adaptable, and you need to be able to learn how you use those. Respect for others is a skill. Taking time to have empathy and perspective, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to understand their feelings and help solve their problems. And sometimes just asking that question is enough to put a project in a whole other direction. And I think that graduates at Dundee are in quite a privileged position, because that is something that's something in the DNA at Dundee, that's something that is a part of how we teach, that we have these socially aware graduates who are, you know, cognizant of the fact that everybody is different and everyone responds differently and everyone uses technology differently, and it's not a case of designing for all, it's a case of understanding your particular market or brand. So with the great powers of computing come great responsibility, and that is, as far as I'm concerned, that responsibility is respecting the people around you and respecting your customers or your clients. And the final skill that I think people should have is that they should just be brave. So step outside your comfort zone, try something new, explore new opportunities. You might not enjoy it all of the time, but I promise you'll get some value, whether that value is now or 5 years down the line, when you're in a difficult spot and you're like, okay, I've been in a difficult spot before, I know how to get out of it, I know how to work on myself, and I'm going to apply that. So those are my 5 skills that students should have when graduating. Now, note that not one of those skills is technical skills. Of course, you need to be able to code whatever, you need to be able to understand how networks work or whatever, but we assess that, right? What I think you need when you graduate is you need those skills. Everyone can make a for loop. Show that you're different. And that brings me back to my other point about, like, you know, use computing in your spare time, build projects, be a part of something good. So that is the end. I'm going to bring it to a close. That's the end of the first Q&A. As I say, there's a whole bunch of other questions which I will answer at a future date. But thank you so much to everyone who has contributed. Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching these episodes. I said at the beginning that I'd do 6 and see how it goes. I think I've now recorded 6, so this would be the 7th recorded. They wouldn't all come out in the order that they were recorded, just because I need people to approve them and all sorts of stuff. So thank you very much. Keep listening. You can subscribe. I feel like such an idiot saying that, but please subscribe. And you can catch up with more episodes. If you have an episode that you would like me to record, a topic you'd like me to discuss, or someone you'd like me to talk to, maybe that person is you, get in touch and we can set something up. Cheers.